The courtroom was utterly silent. Judge Maya Carter, young, brilliant, and the first black woman to ever hold this position, watched him from the bench, her expression impossible to read. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice even but firm. "In my courtroom, everyone rises when the judge enters." Brandon let out a loud scoff. "Not today," he retorted, leaning back in his seat. "Not for you?" Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "Right." Even the security guards shifted, uneasy. Lawyers glanced at each other, visibly nervous. Cameras were rolling. This was a high-profile trial, and the world was tuned in. Maya didn't so much as flinch. She merely tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she'd already solved. Then she did something that left everyone stunned. Without breaking eye contact, he'd been untouchable. The king of Wall Street, the mastermind behind coal industries. $1 trillion empire. Money, power, influence, he possessed it all. He wasn't merely wealthy. He controlled entire industries, kept politicians in his pocket, and shaped market futures with a single word. Yet arrogance had always been his downfall. That was what had landed him here. The scandal had erupted like an earthquake. Millions. In fraud, insider trading, bribery, every crime a man like him believed he could commit without consequences. Authorities had been chasing him for years, but until now, they'd lacked solid proof. The arrest had been humiliating, FBI agents storming his penthouse, dragging him out in cuffs while paparazzi snapped photos. His face splashed across headlines. Everywhere, the mighty Brandon Cole brought low, but he wasn't afraid. No, he was furious, because people were no longer treating him like a king. They were treating him like a criminal. His legal team had fought tooth and nail to keep him out of court, but nothing worked. The judge denied every motion, every request. And then he discovered who the judge was. Maya Carter, a young black woman in her early 40s, renowned for being relentless. She'd made her name going after the rich and powerful. Nobody had ever been able to buy her off. Nobody had ever intimidated her. Brandon had laughed when he heard a black woman. He'd sneered in his lawyer's office, sitting over me. "You've got to be kidding." "She's the best judge in the state," his lawyer had warned. "Sharp, fair, and she hates corruption." "She's not going to play games with you, Brandon." But Brandon hadn't listened. In his mind, there was no way some woman, especially a woman like her, could bring him down. And now, sitting in this courtroom facing the woman who held his future in her hands, he decided to show her exactly what he thought of her by refusing to stand. By refusing to recognize her authority, and she responded with one shocking action. Chaos erupted in the room. The gavel strike rang out like a gunshot. "All rise." Her voice rang out again, sharper this time. The bailiff stepped forward. "Lawyers," whispered anxiously. The audience watched with wide eyes. But Brandon just smirked, thought he'd won. Oh, but he had no idea what was coming. The echo of the gavel still hung in the air like a war drum. The room was thick with tension, eyes darting between Judge Maya Carter and the man who had refused to rise. Brandon Cole wore a wide, smug grin, arrogant, confident that he'd put her in her place, but he didn't know Maya Carter. Without losing her composure, the judge leaned forward, resting her elbows on the bench. Her brown eyes locked onto his, steady and impossible to read. Then, in a voice so calm, it sent chills through the courtroom, she spoke. "Mr. Cole, you seem to believe this courtroom belongs to you, that the rules don't apply to you, that I don't apply to you." Brandon let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "That's one way to put it." Maya gave a small, knowing smile. She nodded toward the uniformed officer. "Officer," she said, "remove Mr. Cole from my courtroom. Now." Brandon's smirk dropped instantly. "What? You heard me?" Maya said evenly. "Remove him. He can watch the proceedings from a holding cell." Gasps spread through the courtroom. Defense lawyers leaped to their feet, voices overlapping. "Your Honor, that's completely unnecessary. You can't do that." Brandon's voice was no longer amused. It was full of rage. Maya ignored them, Mr. Cole has made it perfectly clear he doesn't respect this court. He'll be held in contempt and removed until he's ready. To behave like an adult, the two officers moved closer. Brandon jerked back in his chair. "You touch me, I'll sue you for," but the first officer seized his arm. Brandon lunged, a chair screeching across the floor. Gasps broke out as the billionaire yanked his arm away and spun toward the approaching officers. His face red with fury. "I dare you to lay another hand on me," roared. Maya remained unmoving, watching the chaos unfold as though she'd seen it all before. The officers weren't fazed. They were used to violent criminals, gang leaders, hardened offenders. A wealthy man throwing a tantrum was nothing new. Brandon swung at one of them. It's a fatal mistake. The courtroom erupted. The officers moved like trained fighters. One grabbed Brandon's arm and twisted it behind his back. The other shoved him forward over the desk, pinning him. Papers scattered everywhere. His expensive watch clattered to the floor. "Get off me," Brandon bellowed, thrashing wildly. His suit rumpled. "Do you know who I am?" The entire courtroom stared in stunned silence. A few reporters scribbled furiously into notebooks. Cameras clicked non-stop. The mighty Brandon Cole, trillionaire, industry king, Wall Street god, was being dragged out of court like a common criminal. Maya Carter leaned back in her chair, saying nothing as they hauled him away. She didn't have to. Brandon's furious shouts echoed down the hallway as the doors slammed shut behind him. The silence that followed was suffocating. The world had just witnessed something unprecedented. Judge Maya Carter turned to the stunned courtroom. "Hey, shall we proceed?" She asked calmly. 2 hours earlier, Brandon had been in his private holding cell, getting ready for what he assumed would be another courtroom charade. His lawyers had assured him they'd get him out of this mess. "It's all politics," they'd said. "The government just wants to make an example of you. Won't win." Brandon had smirked, sipping imported coffee. "You never do." He'd weathered lawsuits before, fines, hearings. It was all part of the game. He'd always bought his way out. Money solved everything. But this case was different. This time it wasn't just about fines. This was about prison. They had him. Nailed for financial crimes, fraud, money laundering, bribery. The government had finally compiled enough evidence to bring him down. And the judge assigned to his case was a black woman infamous for showing no mercy to corrupt businessmen. Men like him, he'd laughed when he first heard. "She's going to love me," he'd joked to his lawyer. "Maybe I'll make her an offer when this is over. She can come work for me." His legal team had been nervous. "Brandon, I'm telling you, don't underestimate her." But Brandon had underestimated her. Now he was being dragged from her courtroom, humiliated in front of the entire world. The holding cell was small and freezing, the metal bench pressing hard into his back. Brandon sat there seething, his expensive suit wrinkled, hair disheveled. His lawyers rushed in right after his removal, pale-faced. Brandon, one of them, hissed. Pacing the cramped room, "What the hell was that?" Brandon scoffed. "That was me refusing to bow to a nobody." The lead attorney, Jonathan Reeves, a silver-haired man, rubbed his temples. "You just made a huge mistake." Brandon rolled his eyes. "Oh, please. She's trying to make a statement. Let her have her little moment. We'll be back in that room before lunch." Reeves didn't look convinced. "Brandon, she held you in contempt of court. She can keep you in here as long as she wants." Brandon narrowed his eyes. "How long are we talking? Days? Weeks? Until you cooperate." Brandon shot up from the bench. "What? No way. Call my people. We're not playing her game." Reeves hesitated. Brandon jabbed a finger at him. "Now, Jonathan." With a sigh, Reeves pulled out his phone, dialed a number, waited. Then his eyes went wide. He pulled the phone away from his ear, shaking his head. "They cut off your privileges." Brandon's blood ran cold. "What?" "She's not letting you make any calls." Brandon clenched his fists. "That witch." "Brandon, listen to me," Reeves said urgently. "This woman isn't like the others. She doesn't care about your money, your power, or your name. You have to play this smart." Brandon's breathing was ragged. His hands trembled. It wasn't how it was supposed to go. "I don't lose," he muttered. Reeves sighed. "You just did. At that moment, the door to the cell opened. A uniformed officer stepped in. "Judge Carter is ready to see you again." Brandon straightened, his expression hardening. Fine, if she wanted to play games, he'd play. But he wasn't going to lose, not to her. With a smirk, he adjusted his suit and stepped forward. "Let's see what she's got." Brandon Cole strode back into the courtroom like a man returning to his throne. The humiliation of being dragged out still burned inside him, but he buried it beneath his arrogance. He'd spent his entire life commanding respect, bending people to his will. He wasn't about to let some small-time judge treat him like a criminal. As the door swung open, the entire courtroom turned to stare. The cameras zoomed in. Reporters whispered among themselves. They'd seen him removed in disgrace, and now they were eager to see what he'd do next. He smirked. Let them watch. The officers led him back to his seat. His lawyers shot him warning glances, silently begging him to behave. Judge Maya Carter sat on the bench, calmly flipping through a file, as if she hadn't just humiliated a billionaire in front of the world. Her face remained serene, unfazed. Brandon clenched his jaw. He hated that. Hated that she wasn't even rattled by his presence. The bailiff stepped forward. All rise. Brandon stayed seated for a moment. The entire courtroom froze. A ripple of murmurs passed through the spectators. His lawyers stiffened. His smirk widened. Then the gavel slammed down. Bam. Judge. Carter didn't even look up from her papers. "Mr. Cole, I don't think you understand how this works." Brandon leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Oh, I understand perfectly." The room fell silent. Judge Carter finally raised her eyes to meet his. "Good then, let's begin." "You'll get what this means," she said, turning toward the BFF. "Take him away." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Brandon's confident grin disappeared. "Excuse me," he said, as the BFFs advanced on him. Judge Carter kept speaking, her voice relaxed, nearly uninterested. "Clearly, Mr. Cole isn't prepared to respect the protocols of this court. He'll stay in a holding cell until he learns some manners." Brandon leaped to his feet. "You can't." "I can, and I will." She cut in smoothly, signaling the BFFs before he could protest further. The BFFs seized Brandon once more. He wrenched his arms away, shouting, "You have no right. You're nothing." But the courtroom exploded into chaos. Cameras flashed relentlessly, while Brandon fought the officers, rage echoing in his voice. "Do you know who I am?" he roared, as the BFFs dragged him toward the exit. "You'll regret this, Carter," he bellowed. "You think you can humiliate me?" Judge Carter didn't reply. She simply watched as Brandon was hauled away. This time, the courtroom didn't just murmur. It broke into a frenzy. People whispered urgently. Reporters rushed to scribble notes. Even Brandon's own lawyers exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't how any of it was meant to go, but Maya Carter didn't waver. She tapped her gavel lightly. "Proceed," she ordered, and just like that, the hearing resumed. Meanwhile, Brandon sat by himself in his cell, heart hammering in his chest. He'd never felt fury like this, that woman that nobody was treating him like trash, as if he were some low-level criminal. He paced the tiny cell, fists clenched tight. This wasn't just about legal proceedings anymore. It had turned personal. No one humiliated Brandon Cole. No one. His legal team had tried visiting again, but he'd thrown them out. He refused to hear any lectures about playing nice. No. He was going to crush her. Judge Carter thought she held all the power, thought she was in control. She didn't understand who she was dealing with. Brandon wasn't just wealthy, he owned people. It was time to remind the world who truly ruled. A slow, dark grin spread over his face as he leaned back against the wall, tapping his fingertips. Together, it was time to make a call. 3 hours later, Judge Maya Carter stepped into her office and quietly shut the door behind her. She released a small sigh, pressing her fingers to her temple. The day had drained every ounce of her energy. Brandon Cole was unlike any defendant she'd ever faced. She'd dealt with arrogance before. She'd sentenced powerful men who believed the law couldn't touch them. But there was something different about Brandon, something sinister. He wasn't simply throwing a fit. He was a man who believed. The world was his personal possession. She moved to her desk, flipping through case files. The evidence stacked against Brandon was massive. His empire thrived on lies, corruption, and greed. He'd destroyed lives, stolen millions, and laughed while doing it. And now, he was furious because, for the first time, someone had dared tell him no. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She glanced up as her clerk Daniel peeked inside. "Judge, I think you'll want to see this." She frowned.
What is it?
Daniel entered, holding out a tablet. She took it, eyes scanning the screen, and froze. Brandon Cole was trending online. It's not because of his outburst in court, but because of her. Headlines blared across the screen. Rogue judge humiliates billionaire abuse of power in courtroom chaos. Brandon Cole denied basic rights. Judge Maya Carter goes to Flores. This about race. Maya's fingers tightened around the tablet. "They're spinning this against you," Daniel said softly. Maya exhaled a slow, measured breath. She'd anticipated backlash. Brandon Cole possessed connections, influence, but she hadn't expected it to spread so fast. The narrative had shifted. She was becoming the villain. Her heart pounded, though her face stayed composed. She set the tablet down and looked at Daniel. "Schedule a meeting with the Chief Justice," she instructed. Daniel hesitated. "Do you think they're going to?" "I don't know," she confessed, "but I need to be ready. Because this is no longer just a trial, it's a battle. And I've just become Brandon Cole's new target." Maya Carter sat in the Chief Justice's office, her hands neatly folded atop the table. Opposite her sat Chief Justice Roland Hayes, an older man with piercing eyes and a calm presence. The room smelled of leather and coffee, lined with shelves of law books. She'd been in this office before, but never under these circumstances. "Judge," Carter Hayes began, laying a newspaper on the table, her name splashed across the front page. "We've got a problem." Maya didn't flinch. She'd already seen the headlines. She'd read the twisted accounts being spread by Brandon Cole's people. They were painting her as the villain, a biased judge, a power-hungry activist. Outlets even hinted that she'd singled out Brandon Cole because of race. It was outrageous and dangerous. Maya drew in a deep breath. "Sir, I followed the law." He refused to stand, refused to respect the court. "I don't disagree with your decision," Hayes cut in. "But you need to understand something. Brandon Cole isn't just another defendant. He has power, his influence. And right now, he's using every bit of it to turn this case into a public spectacle." Maya's jaw tightened. "So what are you saying?" Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm saying if this continues, the Judicial Committee might start asking questions. They could push to have you removed from the case." Maya's stomach twisted, though her face remained calm. Removed. That's what Brandon wanted all along. This was his strategy. He wasn't fighting solely in court, he was waging war through the media, turning the world against her. Maya met Hayes' eyes. "Are you telling me to step down?" Hayes shook his head. "No, not yet. But you have to be cautious. Don't give him any more ammunition." Maya exhaled slowly. Understood. But inside, she was already plotting her next move. Brandon Cole leaned back in his private cell, a lazy smirk playing on his lips as he watched the news on the small TV mounted on the wall. The media was doing exactly what he wanted. Reporters were analyzing Maya Carter's background, questioning her past rulings, suggesting she had a personal vendetta against influential men. They were shifting the narrative, transforming her into the villain. Perfect. That was step one. Step two, destroy her completely. The cell door opened, and his lead attorney, Jonathan Reeves, stepped in, arms folded. "Shh. Looks like your little PR stunt paid off," Reeves said. "Already. Talking about removing her from the case?" Brandon chuckled. "Did you really think I'd sit in here and let her humiliate me?" Reeves didn't laugh. "Brandon, you need to be careful. You're winning in the media, but inside that courtroom she still has authority." Brandon's smirk remained. "Not for long." Reeves paused. "What exactly are you planning?" Brandon stood, adjusting his suit jacket. "Nothing," he said lightly, though his eyes gleamed with something dangerous. "Just making sure Judge Carter remembers her place." Reeves frowned. Brandon. Brandon raised a hand to silence him. Relax, Jonathan. I'm only reminding. Her, who she's dealing with. Reeves still looked uneasy. But Brandon didn't care. He'd been embarrassed once. It wasn't going to happen again. That evening, Maya Carter pulled into her driveway, worn out yet resolute. Her meeting with Chief Justice Hayes had only confirmed what she already suspected. Brandon Cole was attempting to intimidate her. But she refused to be frightened. She'd handled worse. As she stepped out of her car, the cool night air filled her lungs. The neighborhood lay silent under the glow of streetlights, stretching long shadows over the pavement. She walked toward her front door, her mind racing with the next step she needed to take. That's when she spotted it. A single white envelope tucked into the doorframe. Her heart lurched. She hadn't been expecting any mail. Frowning, she pulled it free and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Her words were printed in thick black letters. Step down or else. Maya's breath caught. She slowly scanned the dark street. The parked cars, the quiet houses. Nothing. No one. But someone had been here. Someone had delivered this threat. Her grip tightened around the note. It had to be Brandon. Maya was playing dirty. Maya drew a steady breath, forcing calm into her voice. She was not the kind of woman who surrendered. If Brandon Cole wanted war, then he had just declared one. Standing on her porch, Maya clutched the note. Her heart raced, but her expression remained impassive. She'd received threats before it came with the job, but this felt different. This wasn't from some random criminal. This was personal. This was Brandon Cole. She stepped into her house and locked the door behind her. The silence inside seemed heavier than usual. She inhaled deeply, then pulled out her phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, a voice answered. "This is Detective Langley. Langley, it's Carter," she said. A pause, then a sigh. "What happened?" "I need you to come to my house," she said, her voice firm. Langley didn't waste time with questions.
House.
"On my way." Maya set the note on her kitchen table and sank into a chair, her thoughts churning. Brandon Cole wanted to scare her, but fear wasn't in her nature. Meanwhile, Brandon sat in his cell, waiting. The game had started. Didn't need to deliver the threat personally. He had people who handled such things and who were capable of far worse if necessary. Maya. Carter thought she could publicly humiliate him, thought she could treat him like some petty criminal. She was about to discover the truth. He wasn't merely wealthy. He was lethal. And anyone who crossed him never escaped unscathed. The cell door opened, and Jonathan Reeves entered again, his face etched with concern. "Brandon, what the hell did you do?" Brandon gave a sly grin. "It's a broad question, Jonathan. You'll have to be more specific." Reeves threw a folder down on the table. "This just came from the prosecution. They're moving to have your bail revoked." Brandon raised an eyebrow. "Bail? I don't even have bail yet." "They were going to consider it," Reeves snapped. "But after your little courtroom stunt and the media chaos you unleashed, they want you locked up until trial." Brandon laughed. "Let them try." Reeves wasn't amused. "Brandon, listen to me. The judge still controls this case. She can make things hell for you." Brandon leaned closer. "Not for much longer." Reeves hesitated. "What exactly are you planning?" Brandon merely smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." Detective Langley arrived at Maya's house 20 minutes later. Tall and broad-shouldered, he radiated a known-sense attitude Maya respected. As soon as he stepped inside, she handed him the note. Langley read it, his jaw clenching. "Where'd you find this?" "Tucked in my door," Maya replied. Langley let out a breath through his nose. "Do you have cameras?" Maya shook her head. "Not outside, just inside." Langley rubbed his temple. "You know who sent this?" Maya folded her arms. Brandon Cole. Langley's mouth tightened into a thin line. "We don't have evidence of that. We don't need evidence. We both know the way men like him work." Langley didn't protest. He'd worn a badge long enough to understand that men with power rarely dirtied their own hands. They sent warnings, and when those failed, they escalated. Langley slipped the note into an evidence bag. I'll have forensics analyze it, but if he's clever, there'll be no prints. Maya gave a brief nod. I figured. Langley examined her closely. Maya, this is serious. I know. Cross the wrong people, and they don't just push back, they crush you. Maya locked eyes with him. Let them try. Langley let out a breath. You're the most hard-headed woman I've ever met. She gave a wry grin. You say that as if it's a flaw. Langley shook his head. Let me assign you some protection, at least. Maya paused. I don't know arguments, Langley interrupted. Brandon Cole isn't some street thug. He's got wealth and influence. If he decides he wants you gone, he won't limit himself to threats. Maya clenched her jaw. She despised the idea of needing protection. But Langley was right. She wasn't only battling a legal case, she was fighting a man convinced he was above consequences. Fine. She muttered. Langley nodded in return. I'll have 2 officers stationed outside your house tonight, and Maya. She raised an eyebrow. Langley's tone was stern. Be careful. The following morning, Maya reached the courthouse earlier than normal. She strode through marble corridors, her heels echoing off the floor, her thoughts razor-dash sharp. Today wasn't merely about overseeing court proceedings, it was about sending a message. When she entered, all eyes were fixed on her. Reporters crowded the corridors, cameras flashing. The media was still ablaze from yesterday's developments. And at the center of it all stood Brandon Cole. The guards escorted him into the courtroom, his wrists shackled. Yet even in cuffs, he wore a look of confident, arrogant, untouchable. Maya settled into her seat at the bench, her expression unreadable. All rise, the bailiff called. Brandon rose this time, but it wasn't out of respect. No, he rose slowly and deliberately, performing the gesture in exaggerated fashion before curling his lips into a smirk. Maya showed no reaction. She simply rapped her gavel. Mr. Cole, you're now facing additional contempt charges. Do you understand? Brandon gave a low laugh. Oh, I understand completely. His voice was silky and assured, the tone of someone who believed he knew secrets she didn't. Maya's eyes narrowed. She'd built her career deciphering people, and at that moment, she sensed Brandon Cole was anticipating something significant. And approaching fast, Judge Maya Carter regarded Brandon Cole from the bench, her features guarded. Something felt off. Brandon stood before her, still handcuffed. But the grin on his face wasn't the grin of a man defeated, was the grin of someone who believed victory was imminent. Maya felt a surge of unease. She shifted her gaze to the prosecutor. Proceed. The prosecutor, David Ramirez, cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses nervously. Your Honor, considering Mr. Cole's repeated disrespect for court proceedings and his blatant efforts to obstruct justice, the state formally petitions to deny any possibility of bail and requests he remain in custody until his trial. Maya gave a brief nod. Mr. Reeves, your response? Brandon's lawyer, Jonathan Reeves, rose slowly. His demeanor betrayed discomfort, clearly unsettled by his client's behavior. Your Honor, he began carefully, my client acknowledges that his behavior in court has been spirited. Brandon let out a derisive snort. Reeves shot him a sharp glare before pressing on. However, we assert that Mr. Cole does not pose a flight risk. He maintains strong connections in this community, oversees businesses employing thousands, and there's no valid reason to keep him incarcerated before his trial. Maya drummed her fingers on the bench. She had anticipated this argument. What she hadn't anticipated was the way Brandon stood there, relaxed and confident. As if this entire hearing were mere theater-like, he already knew her ruling. A tighter, knot twisted in her stomach. Maya drew a measured breath and sat. Straighter, Mr. Cole has shown flagrant disregard for this court, and I see no sign he intends to treat these proceedings with the gravity they deserve. Therefore, the courtroom doors slammed open. A man in a sharp suit strode in, flanked by 2 other attorneys. He carried a briefcase, his expression calm yet unreadable, moving with practiced authority. All eyes in the room swung to him as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Brandon's smirk widened. Maya's stomach lurched. The man halted near the defense table and cleared his throat. "Your Honor, my name is Richard Calloway. I'm now representing Mr. Cole." Reeves stiffened beside Brandon, his complexion turning pale. Maya frowned. "Mr. Calloway, I wasn't advised of any change in counsel." Calloway offered a polite smile. "My apologies, Your Honor. The paperwork was filed this morning. Mr. Reeves will be stepping down as lead counsel." Reeves looked as if he'd been struck.
How?
Brandon, on the other hand, appeared ecstatic. Maya's fingers tightened around her gavel. Calloway's name was far from unfamiliar. He was a fixer, a legal predator hired by billionaires when they wanted their troubles to vanish. The very worst type of lawyer. Calloway turned to face the prosecution. "Given this development, Your Honor, we respectfully ask for a postponement before any decisions are made concerning Mr. Cole's bail." Maya's eyes narrowed. "And why? Should I grant that?" Calloway didn't flinch. "Because, Your Honor, as of this morning, new evidence has surfaced, evidence that changes everything." The room erupted into hushed chatter. Maya's pulse thudded in her ears. "What evidence?" Calloway's smile sharpened, his eyes gleaming. "We've secured proof that my client is being unfairly singled out. This case isn't about justice, it's about bias." Maya's heartbeat accelerated. There it was. The trap. Brandon hadn't been waiting for a ruling. He'd been waiting for this. "Your Honor," Calloway continued smoothly, stepping closer, "we possess evidence indicating that Judge Carter holds personal bias against my client. Accordingly, we are filing a formal motion to have you removed from this case." Maya's breath caught. A stunned hush fell over the courtroom, quickly shattering into chaos. Reporters scrambled to take notes. The prosecutor whispered heatedly to his team. Brandon's former lawyer, Reeves, looked ready to vanish. But Brandon just grinned. Maya's jaw locked tight. On what basis? Calloway calmly opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Your Honor, over the past week, several media outlets have expressed concerns regarding your impartiality. We have gathered statements, prior rulings, and social media posts indicating a clear pattern of bias against wealthy defendants, especially powerful men." Maya's stomach churned. "That's ridiculous." Calloway gave a mild shrug. "Perhaps. But even the appearance of bias is enough. And now, with the public questioning your motives, we contend you can't deliver a fair trial." The prosecution leapt to their feet. "Your Honor, this is merely an attempt to distract the court." Calloway raised a placating hand. "We're not asking for much. We only request that a different judge preside over this matter, one without pronounced views about men like Mr. Cole." Maya's fingers dug into the bench. They weren't trying to win inside the courtroom. They were trying to remove her from the equation entirely. This wasn't a legal argument. It was a power play. And worst of all, it could succeed. Maya slowly exhaled. "I will review your motion. However, until a decision is reached, these proceedings will continue." Calloway inclined his head smoothly. "Of course, Your Honor." Maya turned toward the prosecution. "Mr. Ramirez, proceed." Ramirez hesitated briefly, then gathered himself. "Your Honor, given Mr. Cole's ongoing obstruction, we maintain our position that his bail should be revoked." Maya met Brandon's gaze. He appeared utterly unfazed. Almost, Maya's grip on her gavel tightened. She couldn't allow them to force her out. Yet the entire world was watching. If she ruled against Brandon now, it would look retaliatory. If she ruled in his favor, he'd walk away victorious. Brandon was well aware of this, maneuvered her into a trap. Maya drew a sharp breath and spoke in a steady voice. "I will consider the motion. However, under the current circumstances, I will not issue a decision regarding bail until my review is complete." Brandon chuckled softly. He'd won this round. Maya brought her gavel down. "Court is adjourned." The instant she stepped down from the bench, she felt every camera lens in the room swing toward her. Brandon Cole had played his move. Now she had to find a way to defeat him before it was too late. Maya Carter stormed into her chambers, her pulse pounding in her chest. She shut the door behind her and drew a long, shaking breath. Brandon Cole was engaging in a dangerous game. And for the first time since the trial had begun, she realized he might actually win. A sharp knock rattled her door. She already knew who. It was, "Come in." The door swung open, and David Ramirez entered, his face etched with frustration. "Judge Carter, what the hell just happened out there?" Maya rubbed the bridge of her nose. Cole happened, and Calloway. Ramirez flung, his hands upward. "They've just painted a huge target on your back. If that motion succeeds, you'll be off this case, and we both know what that means. He'll walk. We'll get a judge he can manipulate, and this whole thing will vanish." Maya understood perfectly. That was their strategy. Brandon Cole wasn't. Simply fighting her in court, he was battling her outside it as well. If she lost, justice would never reach him. She lowered herself into her chair, rubbing her temples. "They want me to overreact. If I deny him bail right now, after their stunt, it'll look like I'm proving them right." Ramirez exhaled heavily. "So what's the plan?" Aja raised her head, her mind clearing. "They're counting on me to play defense. They want me reactive. But that's not happening. It's time we went on the attack. Get me everything on Calloway," she ordered. "I want to know who his clients were. Every case where he's pulled tactics like this. If there's any dirt, I want it." Ramirez hesitated, then nodded. "I'll see what I can dig up." "One more thing," Maya added. "We need to take this public." Ramirez blinked. "Public? What do you mean?" Maya leaned forward. "Right now, they control the narrative. They're painting me as a biased judge. But what if we release the truth first?" Ramirez's eyes widened. "Leaks." Maya nodded firmly. "We expose Cole. If the public sees who he really is, his record of corruption, how he silences people, the argument that I'm biased falls apart." Ramirez stared at her, then slowly broke into a smile. "You're playing chess," he murmured. Maya smirked, and Cole's about to lose his queen. Meanwhile, Brandon Cole lounged in his holding cell, one leg crossed over the other, whistling softly. His new lawyer, Richard Calloway, sat across from him, scanning documents. "You've created quite a mess," Calloway remarked, without glancing up. Brandon let out a low laugh. "I created a show." Calloway sighed. "You're enjoying this far too much." Brandon leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "You saw her face. She's rattled. She realizes she's trapped. Now we just have to let public outrage handle the rest." Calloway finally lifted his gaze, assuming she doesn't push back. Brandon gave a scornful laugh. "Carter's a judge, not a politician. She sticks to the rules. That's why she's going to lose." Calloway paused. Brandon squinted at him. "What?" Carefully, Calloway shut the folder and set it down. "I did some digging," Brandon waved dismissively, and Calloway leaned closer. "Maya Carter isn't just some random judge. She's connected. You think you're untouchable? So does she." Brandon's brow creased. "Connected to who?" Calloway's voice dropped lower. "Federal prosecutors, law enforcement, even high-level political insiders." He tapped the folder. "She's not just protecting her own reputation. She's trying to turn you into an example." Brandon's smirk vanished. For the first time since the trial began, something unsettling crept under his skin, feeling he hadn't felt in years. Unease. "Then we hit her harder," Brandon said coldly. Calloway hesitated. Brandon cut him off sharply. "I don't care what it takes, or what you have to do. I want her out of the way." Calloway exhaled, looking tense. "Hope you know what you're doing." Brandon's eyes glittered. "I do." The attack happened the next morning. Maya had just stepped into the courthouse when reporters surged toward her. "Judge Carter, do you have any comment on the allegations? Is it true you hold a personal vendetta against Brandon Cole? Aren't you planning to recuse yourself from this case?" Maya kept walking, her expression unreadable. But inside, fury burned. Cole was escalating things. She entered the courtroom, but before she could sit down, her clerk, Daniel, hurried over. "Judge," he whispered urgently, "we've got a problem." Maya frowned. "Oh. What is it?" Daniel handed her his tablet. Maya's stomach plunged as she read the headline splashed across the screen. New evidence suggests. Judge Maya Carter has hidden conflicts of INT ears. Secret emails question Carter's impartiality. Did she have private dealings with Coles? Competitors. Maya's mouth went dry. Where did this come from? She demanded. Daniel's voice was tight. Cole's legal team leaked it. They're claiming you've had financial connections to companies damaged by Cole's empire. Maya clenched her fists. Lies? Fabrications? But she knew it didn't matter. This wasn't just a courtroom fight anymore. It was personal, and the whole world was watching. Maya took a deep breath, steeling herself. Fine. Brandon Cole wants a war? I'll give him one. When I'm done, he won't just lose this case. He'll lose everything. The day felt like it was closing in on Maya Carter from every direction. The media wouldn't let up. Accusations kept growing, hour by hour. The whispers echoing through the courthouse. Hallways felt like 1,000 tiny blades scraping across her nerves. She'd spent hours in her chambers that morning, combing through legal documents, searching for a weakness in the case she could exploit. But there was no weakness. The evidence against Brandon Cole was solid. The law was on her side. Yet with every fresh headline, casting doubt on her integrity. It felt as though the walls were tightening around her. Earlier, she'd placed a call to a trusted journalist who'd collaborated with her on several major cases. Everything's set, the reporter assured her in a hushed voice. The truth about Cole's corruption will be out tonight. Maya gave a grim smile. Sure, it goes viral. She knew that if she didn't act quickly, the damage to her reputation would become permanent. She couldn't wait for the system to fix this. She had to take matters into her own hands, and fast. Meanwhile, Brandon Cole sat in his cell, fingers tapping restlessly on the metal table. He'd been monitoring the media storm for hours, and with every new allegation aimed at Judge Carter, his grin grew broader. The media had swung to his side. Even people who didn't know the full story were beginning to doubt her. And once that seed of suspicion took root, it was nearly impossible to erase. But Brandon wasn't done yet. Not when Carter was this close to being eliminated from the case entirely, Calloway, Brandon murmured, his voice low but intense. Calloway, sitting across from him, looked up from the papers he was studying. What now? Brandon leaned forward, his stare dark and unwavering. I want a private meeting with Judge Carter. I want to look her in the eyes and watch her break. It's time to drive the final nail in the coffin. Calloway frowned. Meeting? Brandon's grin stretched wider. Yes, she's playing by the rules. But she doesn't understand I'm playing an entirely different game. That afternoon, Maya arrived at the courthouse with renewed determination burning in her chest. She was ready for whatever might come. Her first meeting was with Chief Justice Roland Hayes. He looked somber, and tension filled the air. Maya, he began softly but firmly. I've been following the news, and I'll be honest here. In danger, she nodded. I know. Hayes leaned forward, folding his fingers together on the table. I understand your drive to see this case through, but this is bigger than a courtroom victory. Your reputation, your career, even your safety, they're all at stake if you keep going down this road. Maya's eyes flashed with defiance. I'm not going anywhere, and neither is this case. Hayes hesitated. I don't think you fully grasp how serious this is. You're a target now. Cole won't stop until you're out of the picture. Maya shook her head firmly. I'm not afraid of him, and I'm not stepping aside. Hayes sighed. I'm not telling you to give up, Maya. I'm asking you to be cautious. Maya rose, gathering her papers. I'll take it under advisement, Chief, but she already knew her path. She wasn't letting Cole scare her off. She'd come too far to let one man, no matter how powerful, destroy everything she'd built. The day raced on. Tension crackling through the courthouse corridors. Brandon Cole was brought into the courtroom, exuding an arrogance that seemed to fill the entire space. He sat down, wearing a smug grin, as if he knew secrets no one else did. Maya took her place at the bench, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes fixed on her, waiting for her next move. "Mr. Cole," Maya began, her voice icy. "Are you ready to proceed?" Brandon stood, hands resting casually on the table. "Always ready, Your Honor," he replied with a mocking tone. Maya refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. She simply gave a curt nod. "We'll begin. The motion to revoke bail is now under consideration." The prosecutor, David Ramirez, stepped forward. "Your Honor, as we've stated previously, we believe Mr. Cole poses a significant flight risk. His vast wealth and international business dealings threaten the integrity of this trial." Brandon let out a soft laugh, as if amused by the accusation itself. Maya shot him a hard glare. "Mr. Cole, you might find this funny. Disrupting these proceedings, I'll have you removed from this courtroom." Brandon's eyes burned with defiance. "I'm not afraid of you." Maya met his gaze without blinking. "You should be."
Hours later.
The courtroom still buzzed with tension. Arguments over the motion continued. But as the proceedings dragged on, Maya noticed something that made her stomach twist. Brandon wasn't just playing for the legal outcome anymore. He was performing for the cameras. Maya caught sight of news crews stationed at the back of the courtroom, their lenses focused on her. And as she scanned the room, she realized the camera angles they'd chosen were deliberate. They were framing her. Brandon had orchestrated this entire scenario perfectly. He was transforming her every gesture, every look, into ammunition for his own narrative. He was painting her as the villain. The media war was his to loose end at that moment. He was winning. Maya felt the weight of the shifting public opinion pressing in on her. But she forced herself to stay focused on the facts. She couldn't allow Brandon to win with lies and manipulation. This was no longer only about the trial. She was fighting for her career, her name, her entire future, and she refused to lose. The days following the courtroom clash with Brandon Cole became some of the most grueling of Maya Carter's life. The media was in a frenzy. Headlines and news segments whirled around her like a raging storm. The narrative had shifted, and now nearly every outlet repeated the same message. Maya Carter held a personal grudge against Brandon Cole. The public was beginning to believe it. Maya heard the whispers echoing through courthouse hallways. Even members of her own staff were starting to look at her with wary eyes. The pressure was relentless, but Maya wouldn't let it show. She'd worked her way to the top. She refused to let a billionaire bully push her off the bench. Still, even her own team was getting worried. David Ramirez, the prosecutor she trusted most, kept urging her to step back. "You don't need to be in the middle of this, Maya. You've already done your part. Let's push for a fast trial, convict him, and move on." But Maya wasn't interested in an easy way out. "Do you really think Cole will just give up?" she shot back. "If I walk away now, he'll get off. I'll ruin anyone who stands in his path. We have to see this through, David. We're so close." And even as she spoke, she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her gut. This wouldn't be an easy victory. The media, the public, the crushing weight of perception. It was all part of Brandon's game, and he was playing it better than anyone could have imagined. Meanwhile, Brandon was savoring every moment of his growing influence. Every fresh headline, every new accusation, only strengthened his position. He'd always known how to manipulate the system. And now, with the media backing him, he felt unstoppable inside his cell. He paced back and forth, mind racing through the next steps of his strategy. He had people in key positions, connections that stretched far beyond the courtroom. Most important of all, he had money. Money ruled the world, and with his fortune, he could twist anything or anyone to his advantage. But it wasn't just his wealth that made him powerful. It was his supreme confidence, its ability to make others believe he was in complete control. He grinned as he thought about his next move. He needed to meet with his new legal team. He also needed to plan his next strike against Maya. She might be strong. She might be determined. But she had no idea just how much power he wielded. And once he got her off this case, once he saw her removed from the bench, the entire trial would crumble in his favor. Things were about to fall apart. But first, he had to make his intentions clear. It was late in the evening when Maya's phone rang, and the call chilled her to the bone. "Judge Carter." "We've just received an anonymous report," said the voice on the line. There's a threat against you. A credible danger. Maya's grip on her phone tightened, her heartbeat accelerating. What sort of threat? She demanded. The caller paused, still piecing it together, but it appears someone connected to Cole is involved. Security's already been notified, but we wanted you to know right away. Maya's thoughts raced. Was this another attempt to frighten her, or was it genuine? She remembered the note she'd gotten weeks earlier, warning her to resign. Dack. Then, she'd brushed it off. Now, faced with this new warning, she knew she couldn't simply ignore it. I'll take precautions, she finally said, forcing her voice to remain calm. The line fell silent for a beat. Then the voice spoke again, more urgently. Judge, I don't think you understand the extent of this. Cole has people everywhere. This goes beyond the trial. Maya felt her throat tighten. What do you mean? Just be careful and trust no one. Maya ended the call, the weight of those words pressing on her. She realized she wasn't merely fighting a legal battle anymore. She was fighting for her life. The following morning, Maya arrived at the courthouse, hyper-aware of every sound and every glance. She kept her head low, hurrying through the corridors, avoiding any attention. Her security team was on high alert, but she could feel the invisible spotlight still trained on her. She was moments away from stepping into the courtroom when her clerk, Daniel, rushed toward her, looking alarmed. Judge, he said urgently, there's been a development in the case. You need to see this. He handed her a stack of papers, and as Maya read through them, her eyes widened in shock. A motion to have her removed from the case had taken a startling new turn. Brandon Cole's legal team had filed an official complaint, accusing her of bias, and this time, they claimed to have evidence. Emails, and most damning of all, an anonymous source alleged that Maya had been directly involved in illegal dealings tied to one of Cole's key business rivals. Her stomach lurched. This was the weapon they'd used to ruin her. She could already imagine the headlines screaming about Judge Carter's alleged corruption, financial scandals, and conflicts of interest. Maya's hands trembled as she folded the documents, trying to steady her nerves. She'd been in this profession long enough to know appearances could be deceiving, and this felt like another calculated move from Brandon Cole. She needed to discover who was orchestrating this attack, and fast. For now, however, she had to proceed carefully. As the trial resumed, tension crackled through the courtroom. Brandon Cole sat at the defense table, wearing a smug grin, as though he'd already claimed victory. His new attorney, Richard Calloway, seemed almost radiant with confidence. Sure, their motion to disqualify Maya would succeed, but Maya refused to retreat. She rose at the bench, her eyes scanning the courtroom, determined not to let false accusations destroy her career. Your Honor, she began, her voice strong and authoritative, I will not recuse myself from this trial. The allegations against me are unfounded, and I won't let them derail justice. Brandon's smirk wavered slightly, though he quickly regained his composure. Your Honor, Calloway interrupted smoothly, his tone dripping with feigned courtesy, these aren't just accusations. We have evidence, and the court must take it seriously. Maya's fingers closed around her gavel, preparing to answer, when suddenly a deafening noise exploded through the courtroom, the crack of a gunshot. The blast echoed like thunder, plunging the room into chaos. Chairs scraped across the floor as people screamed, ducked, and scrambled for cover. Security guards stormed in with weapons drawn, their voices booming as they tried to restore order. Maya's heart pounded wildly. Her instincts urged her to stay low and seize control of the situation, but her mind raced, filled with questions. Who fired the shot? Was it meant for her? Screams reverberated around her as she crouched behind the bench, gripping her gavel as though it could shield her. Seconds stretched into an eternity before the noise died down, replaced by the faint crackle of police radios and the measured footsteps of officers. Slowly, Maya stood, scanning the courtroom. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at the defense table where Brandon Cole sat with his palms resting calmly on the table. His face as composed as ever, no trace of fear, no sign of shock. He simply watched her, as if he'd planned. Every moment, Maya. Daniel's voice broke through the haze as he cautiously approached. Are you all right? Maya drew a shaky breath. I'm fine, she managed, though her voice trembled slightly. She was anything but fine. She didn't fully understand what had just happened, but she was certain it wasn't random. Turning to the officers, she demanded, "What's the situation?" One of the officers, his face pale, answered quickly, "We've secured the room, Your Honor. No injuries reported. We're reviewing the security footage." Maya gave a sharp nod. "I want to know who fired that shot immediately." Her chambers, she paced restlessly, her thoughts swirling. Whoever had pulled that trigger knew exactly what message they were sending. She had no doubt it was tied to the case and to Brandon Cole. The shooting wasn't a random act of violence. It was a deliberate warning. She felt the crushing weight of it all. She couldn't keep reacting defensively. The stakes were higher than ever if she let Cole control the narrative any longer. If she allowed him to manipulate the press and frighten her into silence, she'd lose everything she'd fought to protect. Pushing away the fear, Maya exhaled deeply. She needed to uncover who was behind all of this, and she needed to do it fast. Her phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. It was a message from David Ramirez. "Judge, we've found something. Call me immediately." Moments later, Maya was speaking with Ramirez. "Tell me everything," she ordered, her tone steady, despite the turmoil inside her. "We've analyzed the video footage," Ramirez said quickly. "The gunshot definitely came from inside the courtroom, but it wasn't aimed at you." Maya felt her heart skip a beat. "What do you mean?" "Security traced the shot to the back of the room where Cole's supporters were sitting. We're still investigating, but we're increasingly convinced it was meant as a warning, not an actual assassination attempt." Maya's eyes narrowed. "So you're telling me someone tried to scare me, but didn't intend to hit me?" "Exactly," Ramirez confirmed. Maya went quiet, absorbing the implications. "I need a meeting with the Chief Justice." "Understood. I'll arrange it, but Maya." Ramirez paused. "This is Cole's doing. He's escalating. We can't let him keep the upper hand." Maya's voice was firm. "I know. It's time to regain control." The following afternoon, Maya stepped into the Chief Justice's office, resolute. The gravity of the situation pressed on her, but she refused to back down. "Maya." Chief Justice Hayes greeted her gravely. "Happening. I'm taking charge of this case," Maya declared firmly, "and I'm proceeding, no matter what threats come my way." Hayes raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Are you certain?" "The pressure is tremendous. Cole isn't only manipulating the legal system anymore, he's targeting you personally." "I'm aware," Maya replied, her voice unwavering. "But I've been in this fight long enough to know that if we surrender now, we let him win, and I refuse to let that happen." Hayes studied her closely for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Very well, I won't stand in your way.
Right.
But understand this: if you go forward, you'll be waging a battle far bigger than a trial. You'll be risking everything." Maya's expression steeled. "Then it's war." Back in the courtroom, the trial recommenced under a cloud of intense anticipation. But this time, Maya was unshaken. The gunshot, the threats, the media circusal seemed small compared to the fight she was about to wage. "Mr. Cole." Maya's voice rang out across the courtroom as she stared him down. "You've manipulated this case. You've manipulated public opinion. And now you've tried to intimidate me." Brandon maintained his smirk. "I'm just playing the game, Judge. You can't fault me for that." Maya's eyes narrowed. "You're right. You're playing a game, but so am I." She turned to the court officers. "I'm ordering a thorough and immediate investigation into yesterday's events. This trial will not continue until we know the full truth." Brandon's grin faded into a scowl, but it was too late. "You've shown your cards, Mr. Cole?" Maya said, her voice cool and final. "Now it's my turn." She slammed her gavel down. Court is adjourned. In the days that followed, the investigation into the gunshot revealed the truth. It had been carefully orchestrated. The weapon had been fired by someone from Cole's inner circle. Aiming to provoke chaos without harming Maya directly, media coverage exploded. Reports shifted their focus to expose how Cole had tried to manipulate the justice system. Public opinion turned. Maya was no longer the villain. The truth was out. Finally, after weeks of legal warfare and relentless press coverage, the trial ended. Brandon Cole was found guilty on multiple charges. His empire crumbled around him. The public raged as the media uncovered his crimes and his ruthless efforts to silence those who dared oppose him. As for Judge Maya Carter, she stood victorious. She had endured. She had triumphed. And she had proven that even the most powerful billionaires couldn't bend justice to their will, not while she was on the bench.